Well, good morning, everyone. Such a pleasure to see you all here at what is absolutely one of my favorite events in the city every year, the Boston Book Festival. My name is Meghna Chakrabarti. I'm co-host of Radio Boston on WBUR. And thank you very much. First and foremost, if you don't listen to the show, I'm going to give a shameless plug here. 3 p.m. Monday through Friday on 90.9 or on WBUR.org. And WBUR, of course, is very proud to be a presenting partner for Boston Book Festival because the spirit that brings literally tens of thousands of us together on a day like this, inquiry, investigation, exploration, love of learning and literature, it's a natural combination for the city of Boston, Boston Book Fest, and WBUR. So I'm very, very honored and proud to be here today, especially for this panel. And before I introduce the three amazing women who are sitting to my right, a couple quick reminders. One is that cell phones, if you've already been given that reminder, please turn them off, or at the very, very least silent. And since we are in the smartphone generation, I urge you to resist the urge to tweet or Facebook or look stuff up during this panel. Let's try and create a sacred space where great conversation is actually the focus rather than tweets. The other thing is this is being recorded for broadcast on C-SPAN, just so that everybody knows. And directly after the panel today at 12:15, there will be a book signing where all three of these women will be available behind the lecture hall here to sign copies of their books. So just a reminder on all those fronts. Now, without further ado, please let me introduce to you three incredible women. First, Governor and Ambassador Madeline Kunin from 1985. Thank you. From 1985 to 1991, she was, of course, governor of Vermont and later United States ambassador to both Switzerland and Liechtenstein, and she is author of this book, The New Feminist Agenda. Then, Professor Anita Hill. She's professor of social policy law and women's studies at Brandeis University and author of this new book, Reimaging Equality, Stories of Gender, Race, and Finding a Home. Welcome to you as well, Professor Hill. And then Hanna Rosin, she's senior editor at The Atlantic and founder of Double X, that's Slate's women's section at slate.com. And she's also the author of The End of Men and the Rise of Women. Hanna Rosin, welcome. So we'll first start off with just a couple minutes from each of you on either a brief summary or maybe a story from your book that you think best encapsulates the ideas that you're presenting in these three great works. So Governor Kunin, would start with you, please.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to see you all out there and to be here with my sister authors. And, what's next for women? My career, my political life really started with the women's movement in the 70s. And we had great expectations, some of which have been met. The very fact that women today represent 60% of undergraduates, that you see your friends, your daughters, your granddaughters becoming doctors, lawyers, things my generation couldn't do. And women are in the workforce like never before. And the traditional family of dad goes off to work, mom stands in the doorway wearing a pinafore, if anybody remembers a pinafore, and waves goodbye as these two perfect children stand by her side. Usually the boy is a little taller than the girl. And that family portrait has been replaced. It applies now to 20% of the population. So a lot has been achieved. But what I expected that has not been achieved is that Roe v. Wade would be the law of the land without much controversy after all these years, that misogyny, rape would be under control, that women would make at least 30% of the Congress, now 17%. A lot of statistics, but I think the biggest challenge women face today is how to really take advantage of all these new opportunities and be able to work while providing for their families, whether it's children, the elderly, or the disabled. And that's what I think is the next revolution we have to create, to have policies that the rest of the world already has and American women do not, whether it is paid maternity, family leave, whether it's access to affordable quality childcare, whether it's workplace flexibility. Until we figure out this conundrum about how to combine family and work, how to really enable women to make a significant contribution to society while still loving and caring for their children, that is what we have to do. And it can't be women alone. It has to be men, it has to be labor, it has to be the elderly. We have to form a new coalition to take this next giant step to make it possible for women to do what they really are meant to do, to be contributors to society, but to also provide loving and safe care for their families.
Thank you, Governor Kunin.
Well, when I first started writing Reimaging Equality, it was precipitated in part by the housing market collapse. And a couple of years before, I had written a piece in the Boston Globe about women and the subprime lending spree, it has been called, that banks were engaging in initiating loans, subprime loans, in fact, to many people who qualified for conventional loans. And so as I was thinking about the panel today, what's next for women, I have to say, the last real conversation about what is next for women or women in sort of the public conversation came a few weeks ago when Governor Romney, as a presidential candidate, mentioned the binders of women that he received on his desk to help him populate his cabinet. And I started thinking about what that binders of women symbolized to me. It was as though Governor Romney had to go out and go on a hunt to find women who were these exotic creatures that were hiding out in places where they weren't really obvious. And in some ways, I actually felt his pain in some ways. Because when I started writing about the housing market, I found that there was very little conversation about the impact that this was having on women. And it was as though women were invisible in this conversation. We had talked about it in terms of neighborhoods, we talked about it in terms of people of color, but we hadn't really started talking about it in terms of women. And there were a lot of numbers that supported a conversation that was specifically about how subprime lending and the housing market in particular was relevant to women's experiences. And I can give you some of those numbers. But what I found was that when I started actually doing the research was that what was most important was not simply the numbers of how women had been targeted for subprime loans when they qualified for conventional loans, about how women were more likely, because of owning subprime loans, more likely to end up in foreclosure, how women were, in fact, more likely to be at risk of housing insecurity because women, especially single women as heads of household, were more likely to spend more than 50% of their income just to keep a roof over their family's heads. All of those numbers were compelling, but what I also found very compelling about the stories as I did my research